Hi, my name is Gibson, and I'm the creator of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and in this video, I am going to be doing a personal share. And today we're going to talk a little bit about how I learned to be alone and what it really did for me. So as you know, a lot of this channel is education-based, and we talk about principles of the subconscious mind and reprogramming. I get a lot of questions about my personal life in comments to our customer service inbox from different people in the school. And I decided I'd sort of talk about some of my personal journey and healing and share key principles that really help me to heal and thrive in sort of more of like a story format. And hopefully that will be something that is beneficial for you and relatable. So the very first key theme of this is that I was very codependent. So I was a fearful avoidant with a strong anxious preoccupied side. So FA leaning AP. And basically my relationship patterns during my upbringing were to feel really anxious and to be vulnerable in like a very superficial way, like not truly vulnerable per se, but vulnerable in terms of like initiating connection or reaching out via text or things like that. And if somebody would make me feel rejected or hurt me or anything like that, or not meet my expectations, essentially, I would shut down and be very cold. And I definitely struggled with a lot of the core wounds of fearful avoidant. I felt very trapped, very helpless, very powerless, very easily, struggled with frustration and anger that accompanied that. I felt like I really couldn't trust. I would trust on superficial levels. Like I could be open and trusting to like talk to a stranger or things like that at more of a superficial level, but real stuff, I didn't really trust romantic relationship partners. I definitely trusted friends, but I sort of grew up in this chaotic household and had like a lot of big trust wounds come out from that. And just didn't really trust that I could be vulnerable or be myself or be worthy of love as I was, or sort of these different core concepts or ideas that are very aligned with fearful avoidant. I'm certain that I probably also had CPTSD, and definitely this was before CPTSD was a thing. So this is dating back now like 12 years ago, before this was anywhere near like more of a mainstream concept. And the end of my CPTSD was probably about 12 years ago. And I had a lot of dysregulation in my nervous system, all these kinds of things. But for the sake of this video, one of the biggest things that I struggled with was not being in a relationship or having somebody that I was interested in or dating or seeing. And I would kind of jump from like situationship to situationship and then really not want to commit myself personally because I would fear like being betrayed. And like, you know, I kind of found my sweet spot in relationships to be like this very early dating stage before I had to actually trust somebody, right? When things were like more calm and like there's no big commitment to be in a relationship. And I would try to kind of like keep people at bay. And if people would try to get too close, I would do a lot of self-sabotaging of my relationships overall. And so for me, during my sort of teenage years and upbringing, I definitely went through this series of dating type of relationships. And then when I was probably 18 or so, 17, 18, I got into a really serious relationship where I lived with the person, ended up getting married to the person, all these different things. And that relationship ended at, I want to say 20 or 21 years old. And so during that period of time, I guess it was like 22 maybe. Anyways, I don't know my timelines exactly off the top of my head, but after that, I had a really good friend of mine and I sort of started like this healing journey at that time. And a little bit before, like really towards the end of that relationship, started like evaluating things differently and working on myself and trying to kind of figure things out for maybe a year and a half towards the end of that relationship. And you know, I had a friend of mine say like, you need to learn to be alone. And for whatever reason, you know, as life has it, that really landed with me at that time. And I kind of like looked back and realized like, oh, there was always somebody in my life or always like some kind of focus externally. And I didn't realize at the time. But, you know, and I'd heard of the term, I was in school for psychology, all these different things. But looking back now, I was extremely codependent and I was a caretaker in relationships. I was always like looking out for people. And I was really like that in like my friendships, with my family relationships, like always kind of like worrying about everybody, looking out for everybody else. And then, being strong, typical of like fearful avoidance is like very sensitive kind of inner core, but present is very strong, like I've always got it together. I'm strong. I don't need anybody's help. And really that presentation of strength, in my opinion, looking back on myself now, which I'm curious if you can relate to, if you are an FA, that presentation of strength was actually a presentation of not wanting to be vulnerable and not wanting to need anybody or rely on anybody because of a deeper fear that I would just ultimately be let down. And so I would give as a means to kind of connect. And because I was very empathetic and I cared, but then I wouldn't want to let anybody close, because if I relied on somebody and they let me down or broke my trust, or if I depended on somebody, then what if I was going to be left helpless, right? What if like, oh my gosh, like what if I rely on somebody and need somebody and they're not there? And I didn't trust enough to get my needs met from somebody else or something outside of me in a way where I felt comfortable doing that. And so, I had all these like interesting things. And one of the big things that was also a theme for me at the time was like, hey, I will give and care and show up. And if you're in a time of need, I'll be there to the nth degree. But then when I was in times of need, everybody always just thought I was strong and could handle it. And, oh, Thais always has it together. Like, not even like has it together, because many people probably knew I didn't have it together, but as if like, oh, I would figure it out kind of thing. And despite like the volatility and kind of roller coaster of my life, I think people kind of felt like, oh, like you handle it kind of thing. And it's because I was so unwilling to like actually share the inner turmoil I was experiencing at a truthful level with people. So of course I was going to feel like, oh, everybody says they feel connected to me and love me and care about me, but then nobody really shows up to support me when I need it. But like in hindsight now, I'm like, well, I was never letting anybody, right? So all of this to say that I got out of this last relationship. It was a serious relationship for me at that age and at that time. And I was like, I do need to be alone. And I didn't realize like how important that was going to be for me. But I realized like, oh, I'm so focused on everybody else that I'm never here to like really show up for myself and like focus on my own self and my own needs. And then I'm left feeling like there's this like, doing everything outside of me, and then like nobody's here for me. Now, what I learned later on is that our subconscious mind also really attracts the comfort zone and works to maintain that comfort zone. So if I am somebody who's not looking out for myself and not supporting myself, but supporting everybody else, I'm going to keep going towards people in my life and in relationships and friendships and things like that, where people, want my support, but then aren't there to support me either because I'm blocking it. Right. And so I'm also like going to co-create that sort of dynamic with people. And then that's nice for somebody else who needs support and doesn't really need to commit to anything on the other end. And so here I am constantly feeling let down, not realizing like my part in that situation. And so by learning to take care of myself and show up for myself and learn to be alone, that was where I was actually going to change my subconscious comfort zone, recondition it, because our subconscious comfort zone gets reconditioned through repetition plus emotion. And by reconditioning that comfort zone, now I'm actually going to want to invest and keep investing in relationships that have more of a reciprocal exchange. And so when I realized, okay, I need to learn to be alone, I started figuring out like, or it's not really figuring out, but trying to think about like, well, what does that mean? Like, what does that actually mean? Like, how do I learn to be comfortable alone? How do I learn to enjoy my time alone? And it wasn't that I didn't before at that time, because obviously as an FA, like sometimes you need to push everybody away at the time and kind of like, keep that boundary. But what I really realized more than anything else is like, when I was in that alone time, I was kind of numbing. Like I was like doing anything I could to avoid myself during my alone time. So it's like I was alone and needed time alone, but I was, just like we're familiar with FAs and DAs. We go into like our creature comfort zone, right? Like those are that attachment style, like fearful avoidance and dismissive avoidance alike will often just avoid themselves through whatever their creature comforts are. And so it's like you're alone, but you're not really like with yourself, if that makes sense. And so I started trying to investigate that more. And mind you, like I was on this like healing journey at this point and trying to figure out my life and like who I was and what was going on with me and how to heal and what that even looked like. And I was like reading every book out there that I could find. And I was taking certifications and I was in school and I was trying to like put these pieces together. Cause for me, I actually felt like my sobriety and life and identity just depended on it at that time. And so what I started off by doing is being like, okay, well, in an ideal situation, when I'm wanting to be in a relationship and have somebody around, like what are the needs that that person's meeting? Like, what am I actually trying to get out of a relationship that I'm, constantly focusing on those things in my life? And the first things that came to mind were like, okay, well, like somebody to be emotionally available with me, like to connect, to talk, somebody to have deep conversations with, somebody to have fun with, somebody who gives me a sense of like comfort and security. And I wasn't trying to just think about like my past relationships overall, but like the ideal situation, right? Like if I had the perfect partner, what would that look like? And then I really, made a list of all these things and tried to figure out like, how can I actually give these things to myself so that if I'm trying to be with myself and like have a relationship to myself, well, whatever I would need outside of me, I'm just going to have to start giving to myself. And that took me into like, okay, well, how do I be emotionally available with myself? Well, and then trying to come up with like actual concrete practical steps and strategies and ideas. And this is now like a whole part of our course, like in our needs course and our advanced needs course. It's like how to meet needs in relationship to yourself. It's actually born of like this time of my life. You can check those both out for free for 7 days as well if you want to just do some work on your needs and understanding yourself and learning to be comfortable with yourself. And what I realized later on through like way more research and studying and schooling and all these different things is that like, hey, so much of what we're seeking from relationships really is about needs. Like it's such a foundational component. And for me at the time, I was kind of like, okay, well, what do I want from somebody or a relationship and how can I give that to myself? But then like learning the language to say, okay, these are needs and we can meet these needs in the relationship to ourselves. And also learning that like our identity depends so much on our needs. Like we come to know our sense of self as like what we're really needing in our lives from others. And again, it's not the only component, but it's a major one. So, I was somebody who always wanted like deep emotional connection. And I was like, okay, how can I give that to myself? Well, if I'm journaling, if I'm like learning about myself, if I'm asking myself tough questions, like, these things that I would want to know about other people, like, what do you want from your life? What are your goals? What like keeps you up? Like, what makes you tick? Like, what's really important to you? What are your triggers and why? What are the things you're not over and want to move through? Like just all these types of questions that I would be so interested to know about somebody else. I was like, okay, well, I have to learn these things about myself. And as I came to do that and meet my needs and actually be able to, whether it was comfort, emotional connection, like I would journal, meditate, do personal growth work, read personal growth books, all these things were forms of like being with myself, like spending actual present quality time with myself. And as I came to do that, and then also know that I cared about like comfort, I would like put on cozy clothes and PJs when I would do these things, or like just make my environment feel that sense of comfort that sometimes I would feel from being in a relationship with somebody. Other things that came up for me too were things like a sense of protectiveness, like feeling like somebody's looking out for me or has my back. And it was so interesting too, because so many of these things that I was seeking were exactly the things that I was like the most disempowered with in the relationship to myself. So I came to learn like, okay, well, I seek that in others because I'm not setting my own boundaries regularly. I'm looking for like somebody who has my back because I don't have my back enough on a regular basis. I deprioritize myself. I let go of my boundaries to people please. I, do these things. So if I can show up there, then like I'm going to feel in this really aligned place where I feel comfortable being alone. And I came to be somebody who like truly deeply enjoys my alone time as a result. And it was so powerful to go through that shift and that transformation. And I actually spent the next 3 years of my life from that period, 3 years, give or take. I think it was maybe closer to 4. I'm not sure, but like fully alone and not dating anybody, not like, and for me, it was kind of like out of necessity a little bit too. It was more extreme. I'm definitely not saying everybody should just do that. but I had to like heal this relationship to myself and like know how to show up for my own needs and learn what those needs were and learn what I wanted and take time to like get curious about myself and question things in my life and set goals and develop like a vision of like what I wanted. And I realized as well how powerful it was, because if I didn't know what my needs were and how to share those things with other people, then how was I ever going to feel fulfilled in relationships? How was I ever going to feel like, oh, somebody knows me or cares about me or actually meets my needs if I didn't even know what those needs were or how to share them with anybody else? And so by learning myself and enjoying my time alone, and then from that, as I came to learn myself, being like, okay, now that I know these things are really important to me, what do I want to create for myself? What do I want to do in my life that really supports these needs and feeds these things? I was then able to like move in that direction and feel good about the actions I was taking, feel like they were like intentional and supportive of me and my truth, instead of just what I thought I should be doing from a perspective of like the outside world says do this, this, and this, or whoops, the outside world says like show up in this way, or to win over people's approval, do this. And it really like made me define my life from the inside out, and then spend a lot of my life and I tend to sort of do this and I believe in this and I would encourage everybody else to do this. I try to spend time not being like, what should I do? Or like, what should I do next? Right. Or like, what's my 5-year plan? Because it's the most practical or the most reasonable or the most like what society thinks is the right thing. But instead being like, what would fill my cups? Like, what would really make me feel happy? Like, what's my ideal life and situation? What am I needing more of? Is it like more connection? Is it more freedom? Is it more comfort? Is it more achievement? Is like, what is it? And then how can I, from knowing what feels like my cups need to be the most full in terms of my needs, how can I actually design my life to match that? And so really being responsible for like intentionality and creation from the inside out and not the outside in. And for me, that creates a lot of personal freedom and a lot of personal fulfillment. And, as part of why the school is the way it is and, all these different things, because I was sort of like, oh, I want to work from home. I want to work with people. I want to teach. I want to share. I want to connect. And so like, how would that work and how can I create that? And of course, like I ran like a personal practice first for quite a long time and all these sorts of things. But, really knowing yourself helps you to figure out what you want in a relationship, what you want in a career, and then really aligning the outside world or looking for those things or creating those things in the outside world that fit your inner world, I think is the best sort of way of fulfilling your life. So anyways, I really believe, to summarize, that learning how to be alone is really important, really valuable, helps create a lot more success. And like in your relationships, specifically, because you're not getting into relationships with other people from a place of like desperation or need, but from a place of like, hey, I'm in a really good spot with myself. So for somebody to come in to my life and for me to want to make space for that, I'm going to have good standards around that. I'm going to want to know that that person is really a good fit and a good match and a great benefit to my life. And I can share who I am with that person because I know that. I know who I am and I know that truth. And of course, that's going to change and evolve. But if we have good habits and strategies to stay connected to the relationship, to ourselves as we grow, as we evolve, as we change over the years, and we still have that pertinent information to design different parts of our life and to, recommunicate back into relationships. So anyways, I guess if you want to check out any courses that are sort of born from these personal lessons, the needs course is a great course. The advanced needs course is all about then how to meet those needs in relationship to yourself after you've discovered them. Again, you can check those out for free for 7 days using the link below. And the self-love course is a really great course for that too, just sort of like learning more compassion towards ourselves, but I'll make a video for that as well. So anyways, thank you for listening, for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video.